Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. As we continue with the Swiss Master Series by Colonial, today we'll be looking at the camper. Welcome to part 3 of the Swiss Master Series, and today we're going to be talking about one of the knives in the series that I was very hesitant to pick up, and that is this little guy, the camper. And I'll get around to why I wasn't too crazy about picking it up in just a little bit. First of all, overall size of it when it's closed up is about, let's see, about 3.5 inches. As you can tell, it is a pretty fat knife. It's almost an inch in thickness because of the spoon and the fork on the outside here. And what you have besides that spoon and a fork is a nice little clip blade and a safety can opener. So there you go. The clip blade comes in at right at 2.5 inches overall. So not a bad little blade, useful. It's 420 steel. And then, like I said, you've got your fork and your spoon, and that's it. And that's why I was very hesitant to pick this knife up for the longest time, because while I do collect hobos, as you can see back here, this one lacks a bail. And that's a problem for me when it comes to hobos, because to me that bail becomes very important, because what you do with the bail is you tie a line around it, and then you can take the whole knife once you get made your food off of it and everything, and just drop the knife into a pot of boiling water, and you can sanitize the knife. And that's what is often done with these things. But if you don't have a bail, or a shackle some people call it, then you have to find a new way to tie a line around it and drop it into the boiling water. And if you do that around like one of the utensils that the line comes loose, you're pretty much screwed. But if you have a nice bail, chances are the line isn't going to come loose. You can dunk it into the boiling water with no problem and retrieve it from the boiling water. And without the bail, the knife just isn't nearly as attractive to me. And so it took me a while to pick this one up. And what was even more annoying about this is this not the only hobo knife that Colonial makes. I have an earlier one by them, and it's this one. And you will see, it's right here, you can see on the outside, same fork, same spoon, has the same clip blade. This is an older one. The only difference is it doesn't say camper on the side, and it doesn't have red scales. It has the fake bone handle, so it's a plastic handle, which is good, because if you're dipping it in boiling water, you don't really need real bone. Plastic is fine. And as you can tell, it is an older version, so it has an older style can opener, which is a little bit smaller than the big one here. But this one has a bail, so I can actually drop this one in boiling water. This one, I can't do that as easily, so I wasn't too thrilled about this knife. And if it wasn't for this Swiss Master Series, I probably wouldn't have picked this one up. The only other reason I also picked it up is because this one is almost brand new mint. I don't think it was ever used, and I got it for about 10 bucks. So I think they originally sold for around $2.99, $3.99. They probably went up to as much as $5 or $6 by the end. So I didn't feel like I was getting gypped on the price. But you can get similar hobo knives with a bail for $10 brand new today too. So let's go into more details on this. One thing we need to look at is the size of these implements. So here we have the spoon, and as you can probably tell, it's not the biggest spoon in the world. We'll compare it to a typical plastic spoon, and you see it's probably about 3/4. So it's probably about a 3/4 teaspoon as opposed to a full teaspoon in the spoon. It's not too shallow, so that isn't too bad. But it's going to take you a little longer to eat with it. As for the fork, it's small. There's no doubt about it. Here it is compared to a plastic fork. It's about half the thickness. It's only got 3 tines. Actually, about 3/4 the thickness, but you can see it's much shorter. But if all you're doing is stabbing pieces of meat or sausage or something like that, or grabbing, you know, poking chunks of watermelon or something, you're going to be able to do that with this fine, and then put it in your mouth that way. But yeah, it's a small fork, but just for poking stuff, it'll be fine. One of the other problems with this, well, that's just the way it is. It's small. If you wanted a full-size fork and spoon, you're going to need to get something this size, which is about twice the size of that. And then you have, you know, a tablespoon, and a monster-sized fork. Notice it also has a bail, which makes sense. This is one of those old Japanese things made back in the 50s and 60s. Really big, very heavy, with bone handles and multiple tools on it. So, but if you wanted to get something modern, you could also get this one by Ozark Trail, and it has a regular size fork and the big tablespoon, and more importantly, if I can do it, it comes apart. So it's a take apart Hobo, and you got the knife blade on the back of the spoon, so you can use your spoon and, I'm sorry, you can use your fork and knife at the same time. Something that's pretty hard to do here. You can't cut your food and use the fork while you're cutting the food. So that's another problem with this. Now, modern wise, if you're looking for something the same size, Coleman offers one with a slightly larger spoon, a slightly longer fork, a can opener and a cap lifter. Of course, we all know that in a pinch, this style of can opener can be used as a cap lifter, just not as efficiently as an actual purpose-built cap lifter. But so that's an extra added thing with the Coleman version. And the Coleman version, like the Ozark Trail, comes apart, and you have these knife on this end, so you can use the knife and fork separate on the Coleman. You can't do that with the Colonial Swiss Master Series knife, so it's not much of a master. And the Coleman also has a key ring, so you can actually hold this all together. Let's see if I can get it together. So you can put it all together and then dip it in the boiling water, but you would probably be best off just opening up the knife blade and the internals when you do that, because it'll help keep everything together when you're dumping it in the boiling water. But yeah, this one can go in the boiling water easily, this one not so much. And that's really what bothered me about it, because in the Swiss Master Series the camper lacks a bail, but in the Imperial Matterhorn series their camper has a bail. So I bought this much earlier, long before I got around to getting the one in the Swiss Master Series. Okay, so much for the camper in the Swiss Master Series and what kind of a Hobo knife it turns out to be. I'm like I said, it was the last one in the series that I was ever thinking about picking up. If it wasn't for it being in really great shape, I may have never picked it up. But I'm glad I did, because then I can do this series. But what knife does this knife compare to in the Victorinox Swiss Army knives. Actually, until recently, Victorinox did not make a knife with a spoon and a fork. And when they finally did get around to making one with a spoon and a fork, it was this one. Much bigger. And it's not even an actual Swiss Army knife. They teamed up with a company called Klein to make it. Among other things, it has a magnifying glass. And the magnifying glass does work, as you can see. Camper, 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 camper. So the magnifying glass works. And the other tools that it has, well, it has a spoon. And the spoon, though it looks a little bit bigger, it has a deeper bowl, but it's really not much bigger than the one on the Swiss Master Series. Other tools it has is a, if I can get it out, you got a knife blade. Obviously all you're going to spread with that is butter. It has a fork, and it's one of those flat kind, and it's not really that pokey. I guess you'd be able to poke watermelon with it, maybe, just possibly get a hot dog with it. And the other thing it has, if I can get it out, is a screwdriver, which will work maybe with plastic screws as long as they're not really tight. And I don't think this cap lifter is very functional at all. So what it has also, it has this little device, something so you can hang it off of your belt or something, or off of a belt loop, so you can actually hang this one, and if you needed to, you could, I guess, submerge it in hot soapy water. I don't know how well it would do with boiling water. If you see in the inside here, you see actually who also worked on this, Klein. So it's a toy company. And that's the Victorinox version of this knife, the Camper by, let's get the names all the same. Yeah, Victorinox on the bottom, Swiss Master Camper on top. I actually like the Victorinox Camper, or the Victorinox knife, better because I can give that to a little kid and they can have hours of fun with it. This one I can't submerge into boiling water because it lacks a bail. Thanks for watching. I think you endured enough with the air conditioner noise in the background, but just a really quick slideshow of the Swiss Master Series Camper. Here you see the whole knife and the tank stamp. And here you see it compared with the older Colonial Camper or Hobo style knife. And notice the difference in can openers. This is an earlier knife with a different can opener. And also the can opener and blade on this, I believe, are actually carbon steel, but the spoon and fork are stainless. And a better view of the two different style can openers. Here you see them side by side, and you notice that the fork and spoon are not nearly as far out as they are on this on the Swiss Master Series, and that's primarily because they're using the same fork and spoon, but the handles are much skinnier. Moving on, we see it compared to the Coleman Camper's utility set, which is their way of saying hobo knife without infringing on anybody's trademark. And you see that it does have the red handles and such, and a key ring so you can attach it. But it does break apart, which makes it a much more functional knife than the older Colonial Camper. And this is one of them that I actually do like quite a bit, and I use it quite often, and don't have too many problems with it. If you look at the profile, you'll see that the Coleman on the bottom is slightly skinnier than the top one, and you notice that the spoon and the fork are turned in better and are much closer to the handles. And so even though it's a break apart knife, or I'm sorry, a take apart knife, um, its profile is actually slightly slimmer than the earlier Colonial. So at the end of the day, as a collector of knives and a collector of hobos, I am still happy that I did eventually pick up the Swiss Master Series camper, primarily simply because of its historic value. It's not the best hobo knife you're going to find out there. It doesn't come apart. It's lacking a bail, but it was a knife in the Swiss Master Series, and Colonial is a very famous knife company known for its economy knives. And for that reason, if you collect knives and if you collect hobos, it's probably a knife that should be in your collection. As always, thanks for dropping by, and remember, you're only as sharp as your knife.